over the years, many podcasts have begun and faded. But during that time, only one has managed to be so consistently inconsistent and scuffed in its execution, a feat that no one would possibly be gunning for. In what seems like a world record, every episode has something altered from the last. Today, let's continue looking at that podcast as it once again adds another piece to that streak. Welcome to Knights of the D-Pad. Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of Season 3, as we once again have another person joining us on the set. As Court tells us 2 days before we're filming, hey guys, I'm busy.
I forgot.
I forgot again, skull emoji.
I mean, it's better than leaving in the middle of the podcast session and just randomly being replaced.
Well,
I'd like to make an announcement. Court, the host, is a scuffed little forgetful
somebody
punk.
get the AI Eggman voice and make a bit about Court.
Scott? Come on, Scott.
Court was going camping because he hadn't been camping since, what, the dawn of humanity? Is that what he said? He said something like that.
Let me see if I can find his exact
And then
verbiage
Jason was
here.
just busy, so we couldn't film. So we have Michael with us. Which
Yes.
I don't think anybody...
Have we had you on
I don't
camera
think we've
before?
had you on camera.
I have not been on camera before.
Yeah, because like we've had you like give some comments on an episode, but you were off camera at the time.
I was off camera and in the background.
Yeah.
I existed in the shadows of this podcast.
existed.
I created shorts that have gotten more views than the episodes.
That's true, actually.
No,
So,
I
guys,
mean-
he did most of the shorts from
season
2. That was Michael's editing, and absolutely superb, by the way. I
Thank
still
you.
go back and watch those from time to time.
Some of those popped off for like no reason too. It's like
I have no idea
the
why.
content in them like wasn't like something super viral.
Right, like,
and
wasn't
then
even my
they'd get
favorite
like
of the shorts in
5,000 views.
If I can at least do a quick editor's plug. You know that one we did about Halo mixed with Lord of the Rings?
That one was
I
really good.
love that
I
one.
had an editor's cut where instead it was the elephants plowing through the Rohirrim and it was shattered. Oh, no, crud. What does the announcer say when you run people over with the warthog?
I don't remember.
I actually don't remember.
Yeah, splatter spree. Splatter spree.
Oh, no.
God.
Okay, we'll have to watch that when this is over. When we're done filming.
I don't have it saved. I'm sorry.
Okay, here we go.
Court.
Yeah, he says he hasn't been camping since the dawn of man, and also there will be a very cute girl there that I want.
So he's going. He's
A
simping.
simp.
Maybe he just likes her for her personality.
There
He
we
said
go.
cute,
He
not
said
funny.
cute, not funny.
Okay, good point.
See, if he had just said attractive, that'd be different because you could interpret that.
Could be anything.
But he said a very cute.
Well,
girl,
maybe she has
so-
a very cute personality.
Ah.
She's so kawaii.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Never
all
say
right.
that again.
Let's just go into the episode.
With that being said, a lot of
My name
today's
is Kyle, and one of my hobbies is making these guys cringe.
yeah, like that Genshin joke so many moons ago.
yeah, that we made a short out of. That was
That was
great.
a short that was created out of that.
Yeah, that
Yes,
was one of the
thank you.
shorts of all time.
Thank you for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, that was very low-hanging fruit. So most of today's news topics are all related to the same thing. So in order to make sure that we can just seamlessly run through that, we're going to start with the news topics that are not related to that. So Kyle,
Yes.
you take us off with more Unity shenanigans.
Yes, so Unity has now succeeded not only in angering all of the, small time, haven't done a ton, but passionate indie creators. They've also managed to PO some of the big indie creators, including the developers of the 9th highest selling video game of all time, Terraria.
Terraria.
Oh my goodness, going back to, what was that, episode 1?
That was the first episode.
That's quite a callback here. Yeah. But Relogic, the developers of Terraria, have just announced massive donations to the competitors, the two principal competitors of Unity Engine in the indie gaming and development sphere. And get this, they even said, we don't use Unity except for 1 or 2 assets in the console and handheld versions of Terraria, but we do not like what they did, so we are giving, what was the amount of money?
$100,000.
$100,000 each to their
what?
two major
Godot
biggest
and
competitors.
FNA.
Yep.
And then we'll continue to sponsor the companies with $1,000 a month, and they didn't give a timeline for when that'll end.
They
So literally
said
just-
So
yeah.
they child supported this.
They child support. Even if Unity were to recant their policies and statements, the destruction of trust is not so easily repaired.
Because they felt a simple public statement was insufficient.
Now that is how you
So
do.
literally, just as a sign of solidarity for like indie creators.
Yeah, we should. I've got the tweet. We should put that up in post.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. But this is just so amazing. This isn't just like we stand in solidarity and expressed in the harshest language our condemnation of this terrible behavior. They're like, screw you. We are bankrolling your competitors in perpetuity until we think we don't need to anymore.
Yeah, they say we hope to empower and assist studios that are struggling with how best to proceed given recent events.
I have a quick question. You pay for Unity Engine, right? You pay
I think
to use it?
I think the personal plan now is free because they like had to they
walked a few
back
things
on
back.
a few things, and so they upped the pay floor for when you have to start giving the tax, and then they made the personal plan free. I think because it used to be a fee, so they made the personal plan free, and then they upped the floor from 100,000 in revenue to 200,000 in revenue, or something like that. I don't remember, but they walked back on it. But it's just like when Wizards of the Coast tried to do their finicky
Their
stuff
whole
and then
crap with
walked
the
back,
OGL.
and everyone's all like, "You've already lost our trust. No
Yeah.
amount of walking back's gonna fix it."
And I think I may have said this before, but I think that's a major reason why the D&D movie wasn't a huge commercial success.
Well,
Even
it
though
did
it wasn't-
also come out at the same time as the Mario movie.
Yeah, that's true.
is
There
true.
was it getting swamped by that, but I mean, it was an absolutely amazing movie. Deserved to do better, but let's be real. Most of the core fan base was so PO'd that the boycott was still going strong by the time the movie finished its theater run.
Yeah, I never knew that.
Yeah, it. So Unity is. I mean, like they did backtrack on some things, but they messed up trust. So I would imagine that most indie developers who don't use them aren't going to use them.
Yeah,
now.
no, I think that the number of new Unity users is going to be sparse going forward for the next many years, unless they spend those many years doing like a buttload of stuff to regain public trust.
That's gonna take a while though.
Like I said,
Yeah.
like I don't know, like if there's ever been a more clear-cut expression of corporate suicide.
No, that is corpo suicide.
I don't know. You got to top Games Workshop axing their content creators for that one.
You know,
But axing content creators is different from charging everybody who uses your indie service a tax. I mean,
It's just like-
it's two sides of the corpo suicide. This
Yeah.
one's driven by corpo greed. That one's just driven by lack of like care. There's two different terrible things.
yeah.
Not
It's
quite
kinda
the
funny
same, but
because this whole time Unity could have done something so much simpler and been like, we need a very small revenue cut from games made using Unity, and it would have gotten so much less backlash. Backlash still, yes,
but if they had asked about it beforehand and kind of felt the waters,
felt
how
the
people would
waters
feel.
and figured something out with the community,
would've helped.
it would have helped, and they probably would have been able to keep their dominant position. But them just being like, surprise, we're going to tax you for
Surprise!
downloads, even on your free games.
Surprise! Yeah,
no.
Well,
Anyway, so once again, the team at Relogic is proving that they're some of the biggest chads and awesome people in the world of game development. And they even, in their statement, talk about how, like, we believe that largely in the video game development sphere, it is the indie studios who do things right. Who do things the way that they should be done.
true.
So they want to support that. And you know what? That's good on them. Redigit and the rest of the team at Relogic, we salute you for your support of all that is good in gaming.
Well done.
Well done.
Keep it up, boys and girls and everybody.
girls. Michael, did you have a news topic? We don't have one on the agenda.
I did.
All right,
I did.
what do we
Oh,
got?
I totally forgot to share the document.
Gosh,
that's,
dang it,
Kyle.
that's my bad.
Yeah, so now there's not even like a piece of like visual. I have to put the logo on here. It's his fault.
That's all right. I bet you could probably quickly pull up a picture if you want. But my news today is a little bit sad, really. I feel like anyone who was raised on YouTube during the mid-2010s and even up to this day, without a doubt, knows what Gary's Mod is.
Yep.
Well, sad news. The past few days, the creator of the Gary's Mod tool gun passed away.
Yes.
It is quite.
F in the chat, everybody.
He'll be back in Gary's mod.
There we go. And hey, respects to a guy who did something very cool for
A
a
mod's
game
so
that a lot
good
of
it
us
just
love.
became its own game.
Oh yeah.
Pretty much.
It followed the
The Valve pattern.
the
to be
Valve
honest.
pattern, honestly.
The tool gun and the physics gun will forever be in the hall of I don't know, weapon
Internet fame.
Yep, internet fame too.
Internet fame. Yeah.
Internet fame, they're good. Good guns.
Gaming history.
Indeed.
So on to now what will be the long news topic that just goes on and on.
Oh, yeah.
Microsoft really loved making the headlines this past week for one good thing and one not very good thing for them. Which one do we want to start with? The good part or the bad part?
Well, for some reason, I have a sudden inclination to do like a freaking Dora the Explorer. Which should we do?
I feel
And
like
then
we should start with the good part
right.
so we can run with the bad part uninterrupted. So
Oh man.
the
Okay.
good thing that happened with Blizzard over like the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally just like 2 days or one day ago, I don't know. They like the UK Parliament finally just like gave the okay.
They
And
gave
so
the
the
okay.
Xbox, Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, all this stuff are finally just on the very last step to just all becoming
Yeah, I think the close date is October 18th.
Well, that's not far away at all.
No. Well, like the only thing that had them caught up was they wanted Microsoft to like make guarantees that like they wouldn't be monopolizing cloud gaming.
Yeah, so they
And
had
so
to.
in order to get around that, they sold off all cloud gaming rights to all the Blizzard games and give it to Ubisoft because
Yeah.
Ubisoft is a European company, aren't they?
I don't remember actually. I was reading up
Because
on it
I
today.
like saw the Ubisoft and I was like, why Ubisoft of all companies?
Well, we know that Ubisoft isn't owned by Sony or Microsoft.
Yeah, but I
They
feel like
are
there are
an
probably some
independent
other
party.
better companies than Ubisoft. Because Ubisoft,
I mean, Ubisoft is kind of. It hasn't gone as bad as Activision
Ubisoft is
Blizzard.
French.
so
It's
it's
French.
it may be because it's European, and
It-
they're like, let's give it to a European company. It'll make the UK happy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. Also, can I just say that this visual you pulled up on the screen, I love how you've got like, Overwatch is kind of this fun, interesting. Then you got like Diablo.
I didn't
serious
make this
Call of
graphic.
Duty.
This is a Microsoft
Oh,
graphic.
I know. They made this. The World of Warcraft, super high fantasy, StarCraft, this grungy
Crush.
looking, and then freaking Candy Crush. All these brightly colored little things look like they could belong in a bowl of Trix cereal.
Yep.
Maybe this just indicates Candy Crush has got a deeper lore than any of us know.
Matt
I
Pat, game theory.
I think the thing is they got deeper pockets than anyone else.
Candy
Like,
Crush
I
should
honestly
make more money than the
I
rest of
honestly
these
think there's a
games.
chance that Candy Crush makes more money than all
Oh,
of
it
those
does.
combined.
No,
enough. There's-
I wouldn't even doubt it.
How many boomers play Diablo?
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah,
let's be
those-
real.
those-
Candy Crush hit it off with everybody 40 and up, and just made it was the game that got them to empty their wallets the way that the 12-year-olds do on Roblox.
Fox News.
On loot boxes.
So it's good to go as a fan of Blizzard games. Well, of Overwatch.
Of one particular Blizzard game.
It makes me happy because as soon as the deal goes through, Bobby Kotick just gets axed. Well, axed
At
is
least you're
he gets a
hoping.
$390 million bonus to walk away.
Honestly, that may be for them a smart financial decision.
A small bonus of $390
A
million.
small bonus over 20 times the amount that Blizzard had to pay in the equal employment, like in sexual harassment discrimination
That's ridiculous.
case.
Okay, that's actually terrible.
Bobby Kotick should not be making any money from
He shouldn't
this
be.
buyout.
But I mean, at the very least, if they're like, we're going to give you a stack of cash to just buzz off.
yeah, he
And
is.
then they can do their own thing. That might be one of the best things that ever happened for Overwatch,
yeah, he would.
despite the ridiculous cost.
Yeah, so he is leaving. So I mean, they haven't said anything about what that will mean for like the future of the Blizzard games, like how much control Microsoft is going to have, or if it's just Microsoft own it, but the Blizzard team just do everything. If it's like kind of what Mojang does with Minecraft, where it's like Microsoft is pretty hands off with Minecraft, and Mojang kind of just does what they want with it.
We'd like to announce that the team at 343 will now be in charge of Overwatch. Please, no.
Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that Overwatch server?
No. I'm
Sir.
looking for Cortana.
Wimpton.
Cortana's still alive in here. I know it.
So this deal has been a long time coming, and hopefully by the end of October it'll have gone through, and then we'll get some more information about what it'll mean for the future of the games. But that is the only good thing that Microsoft has. The rest of it is good for us as like consumers, but not good at all for not good at all for what has happened in like the last. I think it was Monday morning was when the news broke.
So right around the same time that our podcast episode comes out.
As a part of the FTC's investigation, investigation is a harsh word, but like they're looking into the Blizzard deal. They're like wanting to know Microsoft's dealings. Sony had some stuff leaked. It wasn't like anything major, but then Microsoft, some buffoon in Microsoft accidentally uploaded a ton of internal documents up to the FTC's like court website into the public domain that were since taken down, but that didn't stop a bunch of screenshots being taken. So we got a bunch of information, whether it's up to date, outdated. Like Phil Spencer said that a lot of it is out of date because it's like from 2020, 2021, but it gives an insight into things that have happened. Everything from the timeline of console refreshes to new Bethesda games to the new controller to information about buyouts of other companies. So where would we like to start, guys? What do we want to start with?
I'd say we just start with, let's get some information on the new stuff that's supposed to come out.
So we'll start with, they leaked some stuff about the Xbox Series X refresh.
Oh my god.
Codename Brooklyn. So it looks like a freaking cylinder, first off. So it's like
good, because I have my
be,
mini fridge and now I have my tumbler,
So supposedly
keep my beverages cold.
It's a discless Xbox.
Okay,
I think I can tell.
So it's a diskless Xbox. It's supposed to come with 2 terabytes of internal storage, which is up from, I think, the base level of the Series X, I think, is 500 gigs right now, isn't it? Or is it 1 terabyte?
I mean, I don't know, but I would hope it'd be 1 terabyte. I'm kind of waiting for just all electronics manufacturers to stop doing the 500 gigs and just transition to terabyte.
I think the X might be 1 terabyte and the S is 500 gigs. But so it's
especially
2 terabytes
games
at
nowadays
its base.
are like all 300 gigabytes.
Yeah.
And its power delivery will be through USB-C front port.
Interesting.
And then it'll have it's $500, which is
wait. Its power delivery will be through a front port?
Through a USB-C port. So kind of like how a lot of laptops get power delivery.
So you're telling me there's just going to be an ugly cord sticking right out the front? There's no option for putting it in the back?
Well, it's a cylinder. You can just turn it. But then you have the back facing.
Yeah, then you have the back facing. You don't have the nice shiny Xbox logo.
It will just be a cord poking out the
That
front.
is, of course, if they don't change something. Maybe this will be a good thing for the development of this console. They'll see that people will be like, "Why is that there, stupid?" And then Microsoft will be like, "Oh yeah, that is dumb."
Let me just take this component and just rotate it 180 degrees.
Just put it behind.
I mean, I kind of thought it was a controller port at one point.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I was thinking. Like, it would be you just have a controller port.
It's a 4K faster. I mean, everything about it is faster than the current Series X.
I'd hope so.
Yeah. So it's got like a new low power mode, which is like 20% of the current standby mode of the S, and it's reduced its power consumption, which is why it's probably able to get away with USB-C power delivery.
Excuse me, guys.
So they're not pulling an iPhone where just each model has the same power delivery as everyone.
So it's like this is the Brooklyn. They didn't give any information about the Series S refresh. So like we don't really have a whole lot about that. They did give us the timeline of it. So it's like the S refresh is called the Elwood, which is because I think the S starts at 500 gigs, so it's basically be 1 terabyte. So like this is the kind of the announced window for it. So it seems like the Brooklyn and the Elwood release dates are for next year.
Like fall of next year,
because
winter?
it's listed there according to this timeline, as whether or not it's outdated. They're listed for fiscal year 25 of September and November, and the fiscal years restart in October. So, but there is another like announcement, like whatever the C-Bio launch is or the C-Bowl launch. I don't, because it's only $70, so that tells me it's a controller of some kind. But then the announcement for Elwood for Elwood and Brooklyn, the refreshes are for next July.
Next July.
Yes.
Okay.
So but then again, according to this, their fiscal years look like they reset in July, so we are in fiscal year 24. I don't know. So allegedly, the console refreshes are supposed to be next year. Allegedly. But
We'll
again,
see.
Phil Spencer said that these are out. Some of this information is outdated.
Allegedly, Unity was one of the best engines for indie creators.
Allegedly, they can't actually spell Brooklyn right.
Well, they purposely, spelled it this way. So, but like
It's like Utahns naming their children. They changed one letter, and all of a sudden it's cool and unique.
They outsourced the naming team to some people in Salt Lake for some reason.
So like the way that they've set up this timeline, it's like the Series S refresh, the Elwood will release in September, and it will have basically 2 months of exclusivity of it being out before they announce the release the Series X to give the Elwood its own like release window so it doesn't have competition, because their data that was released showed that it was like 70 or 80% of like Xbox owners had a Series S. So it's like the S series is like their like big bang for the buck console in terms of like sales, and then like the Series X is only for like the 10-15% of the ownership base.
Wow.
So most people have a Series S according to the leaked documents, which is kind of cool, honestly. But then with the Series X, they announced the C-Bot, the C-Bot is the new controller. They're releasing a new console with a new controller.
Why does this controller have pants?
Simple.
It is kind of weird. So it's like they've got new grips on it, and then precision haptic feedback tells me they'll probably go after the PS5 controller style of haptics and include that in there. Apparently, it's like going to be easier to repair and disassemble.
Lift away?
Lots of recycled materials, new modular thumbsticks, by the way. So those will be customizable, I would assume. It's got lift to wake, and it's got the same old like ergonomic feels of the older controllers, but it's got like app features, paired devices, and cloud. So I'd assume that it's easier to use with Bluetooth because it's got 5.2 direct to cloud, Xbox Wireless 2. So it's just their refresh of the controller. That apparently it's got some modular features, easier to repair and disassemble. So I would assume that Microsoft, when this controller comes out, may start selling pieces of the controller individually. For like $10, you can get a new faceplate of your own color, rather than having to buy a controller that's fitted out beforehand.
That looks like it would be a removable faceplate from the picture you're bringing up. So
it does look like a
you
removable
get
faceplate.
different colors, probably designs. They'll probably sell like promotional packs where like you buy this one game and it comes with a special design for that game.
Well, it's cool to see they're also being unlike Apple, where their stuff are easily customizable and
Well, yeah, this is Microsoft we're talking about. That's their whole shtick with computers. So
Their
why not do it
laptops
with
are-
the Xbox?
easily customizable and repairable. Nice.
Because
What I
looking
want
at it,
is-
because it's got the Elite controller D-pad. So I would assume that it'll have the Elite controller pads on the back, the finger pads.
Probably.
It doesn't say on here, but it says it's got the same layout and activation forces as the Merlin, which I think is the code name for what the Elite controller was.
Yeah. Oh, also, I want to... there's another thing here. This is interesting. VCA haptics double as speakers.
Yeah.
So the haptics will be producing noise?
Oh, Wii controller? Throwback to the Wii
Yeah,
controller.
the
That's
Wii
what I
controller
was
could make
thinking.
noise. I
Well,
remember that.
do the Joy-Cons make noise?
Not that I've experienced.
So yeah, we're going back to Wii. Wii
They
controller
make
here.
noise when I chuck them into the wall.
2006 is coming back, boys.
2006 is making a comeback.
Yay, the Wii.
And then obviously quieter buttons. It's got an accelerometer as well, so motion controls.
So when I throw this one
When
into
you
the
throw
wall,
this into the wall,
it'll be interactive as well.
I like how it says accelerometer as if it's like a car. Yeah, on the right stick, it's also the gear shift. Right bumper is the clutch.
Wait, so you're saying when I'm playing racing games, when I'm actually doing this, it does
maybe
stuff?
it might.
Again, the Wii was
Wii's
Mario
coming
Kart
back.
Wii is coming back.
That's amazing. No, like I want to play a stick shift in my next racing game and use the control.
And then the basic battery that'll come with it will be rechargeable and swappable, so you won't have to worry about
Nice.
running through a lifetime supply of AA batteries for your Xbox controller.
That brings back memories.
Oh yeah.
Salvaging batteries
Salvaging
from
batteries.
other controllers.
So, and it's like, because it has like improved longevity, and obviously with the thumbsticks being modular, that means like if your controller starts having the stick drift issues, you just go buy new thumbsticks.
That's nice.
Nintendo, take notes. You won't take notes, but take notes. Write that down. So this controller looks like it. So I think it's, I don't know if it's going to replace the Elite controller or if it's the step above the Elite controller, like the Elite. I don't know what it's going to be called, like the Elite Pro or like the Master controller. Call it the Master controller. That'd be
Right.
cool. The chief controller.
Sir,
The
what are you
chief- yeah, there
doing
we go,
on
the
the
chief
controller?
Master controller.
Might
I'm
tell
teaching
me-
you how to change the oil on you, 2009. Ford Nissan. Wait, Ford Nissan? What
Ford
the heck?
Nissan crossover.
The crossover we were not prepared for.
So
Move
this
over
new
Infinity
controller.
War.
So this new controller should be, I think, looking back at the timeline, is supposedly going to launch next June, and it will be announced sometime around that space. So I would assume maybe around E3 time period.
It looks like they also have plans for a last chance sale on Black Friday at $199.
For the end of life. The Edith, I don't know if I think that's the code name for the S.
That might be. So if they don't change that plan,
Edith.
keep an eye out, guys.
Yeah.
If you're looking to snag one
Because
of
like
those.
the Series X refresh will arrive like literally just before Black Friday. Like literally says Brooklyn. Oh
my goodness,
I just
brother.
am having issues. Brooklyn arrives just in time for the gifting season is what they call it.
So that's what corporate America calls the holiday season.
And then gives
Happy
and
gifting
then
season,
They
everybody.
announce like why the Elwood, the Series S refresh
Happy
comes
gifting.
early. It says gives Elwood its own moment earlier in the holiday time frame to maximize sales.
Oh, wait,
So-
I mean, it makes sense.
They're kind of giving it. But then the big thing that I liked is there was a ZeniMax, which is the parent company for Bethesda, had its
Hey.
whole like release window for the next like 2 or
Wow.
3 years leaked, as well as like kind of revenue forecasts for the titles. The biggest ones on here are Elder Scrolls 6 isn't really set to come out until like next year at the
the
soonest.
fiscal year 2024.
I think 2026 is more what everyone's looking at. But if you look at fiscal year 2021, we have Starfield. There was supposed to be an Elder Scrolls Online expansion. Did we get that this year? Anyone know?
I think I
I
remember.
have not been paying into Elder
Doom
Scrolls at
Eternal
all.
was supposed
Doom
to get
Eternal.
DLC.
Yeah.
Did it get DLC last year?
I don't
There's Project
remember.
Kestrel
It's
on
3
there.
years ago.
Yeah, whatever Project
Yeah.
Kestrel is.
And also, look at this on fiscal year 23, Doom Year Zero and DLC.
There's supposed to be a new Doom game.
They had another Doom game planned. I'm guessing it's not happening because.
Well, we're in fiscal year 2020. No, we're not. We're about to go into 2024.
Yeah.
It did not come out. New Doom game did
And I
not
remember
drop.
just after all the craziness that happened when the working conditions for Doom Eternal were uncovered and how like the leaders at id Software were being absolute terrible, there's a decent chance the entire thing was
Well,
scrapped
we
because they
are-
couldn't get the company
yeah,
to make
no,
it.
because the 2022 fiscal year
It says that there's an Indiana Jones game. Do any of y'all remember that?
that did not come out
Ooh.
last year. There was also supposed to be an Oblivion remaster. That definitely did not happen.
Oh man.
That got pushed back. Starfield DLC didn't come out in fiscal year 2022. I guess that's now fiscal year 2024.
Maybe
So
five.
maybe are we looking for just everything on there is just pushed back?
Well, yeah,
like 2
because
years?
this has
Maybe.
Starfield coming out in fiscal year 2021, which it didn't. It came out in fiscal year 23, which, well, actually, I think if the Xbox timeline is to see, I think Xbox and Microsoft may run on. I know that generally the fiscal years change in October, so I don't know why the Xbox timeline had the fiscal year change in June. So we're still in fiscal year 2023, but yeah, like Starfield was supposed to come out in 2021, 2022, if not 2020.
So I guess just keep an eye out for the Doom Eternal
I guess
DLC,
keep
and we'll
it-
see if
or
we're just
like Fallout.
on this-
And supposedly in the 2024 fiscal year, Fallout 3 remaster,
That'd be interesting.
a Ghostware Tokyo sequel,
Dishonored
Dishonored
3? Hey.
Project, and then there's just these planned titles.
yeah.
Under the free-to-play / mobile category. Interesting.
Yeah. So this was just interesting because like most of these games did not come out when they were supposed to come out. But the biggest one is that Elder Scrolls 6 is on here. So like Elder Scrolls 6 had a
Finally.
planned release date for 2024, 2025. Or I guess 2023, 2020, because fiscal year 24 would be starting this year. So it was supposed to come out next year, but I believe it's been pushed back to 26 was kind of the timeline that was given. So I don't know, but a lot of the other things, as I like now hide all of this and just go back to just the Microsoft, because there were some other things that like came out from these. So Microsoft is eyeing 2028, at least according to the leaked documents, 2028 for the next console, which sounds about right. You give the Xbox Series X a 10-year life cycle. and they want to make sure that it will fully utilize the cloud. So they like the documents described it as a hybrid game platform that would operate as a cloud-based and also a performance like high-end client hardware.
Farewell to all offline games.
Yes, probably one of those permanently online kind of things.
Yeah.
And then like some of the other things that they described on here was that like they weren't really impressed with the PS5 when it was released and announced, because I mean, you remember when the Xbox Series X came out, they're like, here are the specs, and it was like
beefy,
head and shoulders above the PlayStation 5. So when the PlayStation 5 was announced, Microsoft was like, okay, and then proceeded to just not have a lot on it. So there was that happened. Then the documents also released that they did not take Baldur's Gate very seriously, which we kind of knew. But like they chose not to put it on Xbox because they didn't think it was worth the price tag.
You're kidding.
To put it on the Game Pass.
Oh, you're kidding.
They like had the opportunity to put it on Game Pass. I don't know like what.
They must be really regretting that.
I don't remember what the price tag for it was, but it was like. It was hundreds of millions, I think. I think it was like 100 million or something to like license it for Game Pass, and they're like, "Oh no, that's not worth it." And then it blew up, and they were like, "Oh, oops."
Hey, Larian, can we?
Oops.
Remember that time when I said no and you're lame?
Like, yeah, it's 200 million
that was
now.
really
200,
funny.
200, yeah, you remember that thing? Yeah, it was 200 million now. So yeah, they like did not. They just didn't think of it as big of a because 5. Sorry, why 5 million?
5. That's very different.
In leaked comments, Microsoft estimated a 5 million expense to get it on Game Pass, justifying the low monetary amount by describing Baldur's Gate as a second-run Stadia PC RPG. So I think they offered the Baldur's Gate 3 developers $5 million, and they were like, no, it's going to be bigger than that. Microsoft's like, yeah, it's not worth more than that. And then it blew up, and they're like, whoops.
Man, someone is eating those words with their breakfast cereal.
They weren't alone in underestimating it. I think I think all of the major publishers underestimated it. It's just that so it's like Microsoft could have had Baldur's Gate on Game Pass, but they lowballed them. Or what they felt was a justified cost, but the Baldur's Gate 3 guys were like, no, it's going to be bigger than that. We're better than a second-run Stadia PC RPG.
Second-run Stadia.
So,
I gotta say though, as stupid as it was for them to have made that comment, you gotta admit that's a creative insult for a video game developer. Like whoever came up with that was very clever in the way they said it.
Yep. But then, so as of April 2022, 75% of Xbox Series owners were gaming on a Series X.
X or S?
S, sorry.
There
and then
we go.
only a quarter of the remaining player base was using an X. However, that was over a year ago, and then
So things may have changed.
more recent data says that the install base is approaching more 50-50. But that just means that it's like, it may also be that the Series S just isn't getting as many newer games made for it because of its kind of like budget specs. So that could mean, who knows? And then like the documents also said that they were expecting a Red Dead Redemption 2 refresh in 2022. Of course, that did not happen. And I think we had a news topic on that over the summer that it is alive. Like there were rumors that it is still being worked on.
Yeah.
It's just been pushed back. Yeah. The documents also had a thing come out where in a leaked email, Spencer talked about how third-party publishers are losing their like mojo, that they're not producing games to the quality they used to anymore, which he has a point, but Microsoft, honestly, you're not off the hook either. So
a lot of your first-party titles have not been that great recently, Microsoft.
And well, so it's like what he said was that third-party publishers, probably them included, are unable to replicate the dominance they established back in the days of brick-and-mortar video game retail. And so because they've lost the advantage of highly exclusive access to consumers in those physical stores, and they just have not found a way to effectively cross-promote and build publisher brands the way they have before, the way that Disney has been able to do with Disney Plus and all of that.
I mean, I guess that does make sense, because nowadays you go to your console, you go to the digital game store on your console, and then you buy the game through the console. So that's the thing, that like you're getting the brand reinforcement over and over and over, and you get it maybe once or twice when you see the opening and closing credits when you boot up the video game. You know?
He kind of said that they've adopted a strategy of making huge bets on highly expensive projects and relying on those risky all-in bets to establish publisher brands. and then said that the role of a AAA publisher has changed and become less important in today's gaming industry, which is true.
Yeah.
So that's why I mean, that email alone, regardless of when it was sent out, kind of explains why Microsoft in particular has been like not been making a ton of games outside of like the really big ones like Starfield, because they're like, this is the only way that people are gonna like play Microsoft games, and our like the titles that we have under our Microsoft umbrella is by just going all in on these massive games.
It also definitely does explain the huge change in philosophy among all these different developing companies. You know, I was largely under the impression that it was just like a greater like push of influence over shareholders who are just like, funnel money to me.
Yeah.
I don't care what else you do. You know, but like the thought that it's also just because the market changed because the brick and mortar stores went away and the online marketplaces
It's a lot easier
made it
for
so they
smaller
didn't.
companies to make games and get them out there.
Yeah.
Like
and
Baldur's Gate, because in, 10,
'cause Larian's
15
not
years
huge.
ago, where you had to go to GameStop or you had to go to a store to buy the game, a game like Baldur's Gate would not have done as well as it
It's
did.
true, and like a big part of that is just having the resources and the infrastructure and logistics for that physical release to distribute the discs, the cartridges, the whatever.
Yeah.
But like downloads, that's easy. You
Because
need an internet
now,
connection.
a AAA title doesn't look any different than just your run-of-the-mill game that comes out. So these AAA developers are like, no, we have to make a big game and say, this is by Bethesda. And you're like, oh, the big Bethesda game.
Yeah, it's like I can see how they got to that logic, but looking at how things have
No,
turned
it wasn't
out,
executed very well.
yeah, it
by
wasn't
AAA
executed very well.
publishers.
It's like it makes me wonder, like, why have they kept bullishly pushing into this strategy when it's not been working so well for them? Why don't they do something where it's like, why you can't compete with the bulk of our content rather than the bigness of our, But nope. Anyway.
The bigness of our content.
The bigness of our content. What was funny in the what I found to be funny in all of the leaked emails, because it's like everything else was like leaked documents of like roadmaps and stuff, and Phil Spencer like came out saying it was hard to see our work shared this way, but then he was like making it clear it's like this is out of date stuff. Some of these documents like 2020, 2021, so some of the stuff has changed. And then the memo and emails that he sent to Microsoft employees after this leak, which is like, we're excited moving forward of the things that we will share of updates and everything, because the stuff that the public is seeing is outdated information.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see, because I think they will be feeling pressured to give us updates now that like the information is out there, that stuff is happening. So I'm curious to see how things have changed, what new developments there is on the console, the game plans, the controller. Like, honestly, some of this stuff looks like it would be pretty cool, and I'm curious to see what they're going to do with it.
The funniest thing that came out of these leaked documents, though, so you remember, I don't remember if it wasn't leaked information, but it was like revealed that like at some point in the past, Microsoft executives like approached Nintendo about a potential buyout, and then Microsoft guys were laughed out of the boardroom. You remember when that news came out of whenever that happened? So in leaked emails, Phil Spencer and Microsoft personnel discussed Nintendo and Valve and Warner's, and Spencer in the email said at some point getting Nintendo would be a career moment. And speculated that the Japanese that Nintendo could become more open to acquisition offers in the future because of pressures of its board and directors. And he's saying it's just taking Nintendo a long time to realize that their future exists off their own hardware. A long time. ... smiley face.
Like, that's verbatim.
That is from the email. That is in quotes. Now, I don't know.
Goodness.
The date of these leaked
face.
emails is
Amazing.
public. I just didn't. But yeah, in an email from probably 2 or 3 years ago, probably during 2020, I would assume, because that's when a lot of this was. But yeah, he was. I mean, the email was like he doesn't foresee an acquisition anytime soon, and that's why he was like a long time. But Microsoft seems to believe that Nintendo's best interest would be taking the Sega
Eventually.
route and just ditching their own consoles and just focusing on games and putting them on PlayStation and Xbox. And Microsoft seems to believe that if they can get it, they want to try somehow to acquire Nintendo.
That would be absolutely wild. But this was a conversation that got really big several years ago, during kind of the middle of the Wii U's lifespan, when Nintendo wasn't doing as hot as they are now, and the debate reignited because it had happened before. But it really was big at that point in the online space. I mean, there was a whole like Game Theory did a special episode on that where they had their debate show, if you guys remember
Yeah,
that they used to do.
Yep.
And like the argument that MatPat actually took for that debate episode was that Nintendo would benefit from doing what Sega did, which was to create just their first-party games, just make them or become a third-party game developer, focus on just games, and then sell peripherals with those games, so that they didn't need to develop an entire new console to hit the control mechanics they wanted. And then the Switch came out. And that conversation just died.
The conversation did die.
But I'm curious to see if
I think
we're
like
keep
it's-
talking about it.
There was a lot of talk around that because the most recent console at that point was the Wii U.
Yeah, and the Wii
Yeah,
U was
the
a
Wii U was
big flop.
tragic.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like it has a little bit of traction, because if you think about it, if Nintendo didn't have to worry about the Switch and instead was making Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom for the Xbox and PlayStation, it would run and look better, because they do a great job at making it run on the Switch, but let's be honest, they can only do so much.
Well, here's the thing. I've been playing it on the Switch, and it is so seamless.
Oh, well, no, that's what I mean. Like, it works on the
Nintendo
Switch.
is the kings of optimization.
But if you're playing in handheld, it's 60 FPS, and you plug it into the dock, and it's still only what does it cap out on the dock?
I'm not
Is
sure.
it
I
still
don't remember.
60 or? Oh no, it
Well,
caps
it's-
out on 30
yeah,
handheld.
no, it's never 60, even in the dock.
Yeah, no,
on
it's
the
30.
Switch.
No, I think it's 60 on the Switch. In the dock,
No.
I think it can go up to 60 because
No.
the dock gives it some extra power, doesn't it?
Not in my experience. I mean, having played quite a lot of Switch.
That
like
that
I can
furthers
tell the
the
frame
argument
rate
that-
difference between the Switch
yeah,
and the
but that's
the
the
PC.
thing. It's like Nintendo does a great job at making their first party games run on the Switch, but if they were able to just maximize it and allow it to run on these 120 hertz consoles and be able to pump
wild.
those
The
graphics
Switch
up.
The Switch supports 720p and 60 FPS as the max resolution.
Max resolution.
Now
Okay.
imagine if they could run it 4K 120 hertz.
I mean, like the original. So in Breath of the Wild, if you get a Wii U disc and then get it onto your PC and run it through an emulator, you can play Breath of the Wild in 4K. Like
Well, yeah,
the
but-
models and textures can run 4K.
Oh, you can't do that with Tears of the Kingdom.
You probably could. Because they're using a lot of the same assets and upgraded assets from Breath of the Wild in Tears of the Kingdom.
Well, no, but you're
through
not buying. You're not
emulators.
buying it. Well, you have to
But yeah,
emulate it.
you have to emulate it. right?
Nintendo doesn't want you to do that.
The Switch hardware cannot run anything 4K, but like the assets they're using
Oh yeah,
in the games
exactly. That's it's like
are 4K.
the sole
compatible.
argument that Spencer that I think that Spencer does have is that Nintendo's games would run better if they weren't kneecapped by their own hardware. Like that, you can't deny that. They would run better. They would look better just because the Switch is limited. They look great on the Switch. They did a great job optimizing it, but there is a ceiling, and they ran right into that. They went as close to that ceiling as they could with Tears of the Kingdom
And with Metroid.
and with the
Prime
Metroid
remake.
remaster. So it's like we'll
Yeah.
have to see what the next console looks like, because if Nintendo does go, okay, no, we let's try and get some good hardware out there, then the argument's dead. It kills the
If
argument.
Nintendo beefs up the processing
Like
power,
I think
yeah.
the next gen console for Nintendo will honestly kind of, because if they make another console that is limited in hardware and relies on some form of the trademark Nintendo, yeah, it's not powerful, but it can do this. Because for the Switch, it's like, yeah, it's not powerful, but it's portable, and that was the selling point of it.
But now we have the ROG Rebel or something like that.
Yeah, so it's
Ally,
like, because
ROG
with
Ally.
the Wii, it's like, oh yeah, it's not the most powerful thing, but we got motion controls.
Yeah.
The Wii U, this console is not very good, but we got a gamepad, and it flopped.
Yeah, so I think if we have another Wii U situation with the Switch successor, there may be
Nintendo,
a
yeah.
movement towards it. But like, let's be real. There's hardly a company out there that holds as tightly onto their IPs as Nintendo.
Nintendo, yeah.
I mean, they called up the animators for Wreck-It Ralph and said, no, this is the way Bowser holds his little tiny, cup. His little disposable paper water cup.
Yeah,
it
will take the next gen Nintendo console to flop.
I think it would take 2 gens to
think 2
flop
gens
in a
to
row
flop?
before they give up on, before they even think about it. Because remember, they've bounced back from flops. The GameCube, as amazing as it was, wasn't a huge commercial success, and then they had the Wii. The Wii U was a flop, and then they had the Switch. If the Switch successor is a flop, they're going to be like, "That's fine. We'll knock it out of the ballpark next time."
See,
they
think-
need 2 or 3
I think
in a
the
row
issue
to
that
fail.
they may run into though is that console life cycles are getting longer and longer. Like we're now looking at like consoles are lasting 10 years. And I wouldn't be surprised if the next gen consoles last 15 years if the hardware is made to a point where they can last long enough. Because then Nintendo, if they decide to go with a lower, kind of lowball the hardware to get a nice like, not gimmick, but like a selling point, then they'll have to make 2 consoles in the time that Microsoft and Sony can sit on their one and just do refreshes because their console's hardware works. So I think it comes down to what is the next gen Nintendo console.
Yeah. Well, that's going to set the course for certain.
That's going to set because Sony and Microsoft are just going to be like, we're just going to beef our hardware.
Yeah,
that's all they have to do because they don't. Their consoles aren't sold on any kind of gimmicks or any kind of like selling points of like, oh, this one's portable. They're just like, our console's just really powerful and we have these games. And people are like, yeah, I just like Xbox. I just like Sony. I have PlayStation. Yeah. Whereas Nintendo has always had to be like, we're going to make ours different and it's going to do this instead.
Yeah. Well, not that I think we should launch off into discussion about this because I think we need to transition over to our fun topic for the day, but I wonder if the situation ever came up, like, how long of an ordeal would it be for Microsoft to try to acquire Nintendo? Because then with Activision Blizzard was one thing, Nintendo's going to be another entirely.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with that would be Japan, because Japan didn't care about the Blizzard buyout because they're like, well, those are American companies. We don't care. Do what you want. But as soon as they start trying to buy Nintendo, the whole world probably has issues. I don't foresee that buyout being approved.
No.
As much as a fan as I am of Doomslayer being in Smash Brothers.
Well, I think it would be. I think the thing would Microsoft wouldn't buy Nintendo, but Nintendo would step away from the console market. I think that's probably the more likely scenario. Is that Nintendo realizes they're like, this console thing isn't working. We're just gonna go the Sega route, and they just won't get bought by anybody because I don't think any buyout of Nintendo would get approved.
No, not by any of the ones that would have enough money to do so, and anyone else who, like, it wouldn't be as big of a market problem, wouldn't have the money to make it happen.
The only 2 companies that could buy it would be Sony or Microsoft.
Exactly.
And there's no way in heck that anybody's approving them buying Nintendo. Ain't no way.
That's not happening.
I don't think we see another buyout the size of Blizzard ever at this point, because the only other company that's, like, large enough would be, like, somebody buying EA.
That'd be interesting.
If Microsoft tries to go after EA, or if like Sony tries to go after Sega.
Sega. That'd be
actually, you know what? I'm calling it now. That's the next buyout. Sony's gonna gun for Sega. They're both Japanese companies. I'm honestly surprised that hasn't already happened.
Yeah.
So, anyways, enough about Microsoft. We're done talking about news. Back to your regular scheduled tomfoolery. So I don't know. We did a whole segment at some point. I don't remember when we did it about movies based on video games. This was kind of around when the Mario movie was announced and when it came out.
Yeah, because we really wanted to run that into discussion and see how the landscape was changing on movie adaptations of games.
And we've talked to length about movie adaptations of games, but what we haven't done is talked about the opposite of that. Video games that are based on movies or based on TV shows or based on books
whatever other
or
media.
just something else. Not an original thought.
It's close enough.
Yeah, we're talking about the unoriginal thought video games.
So I think just to start this off, I think, at least on a high note, the Lego games.
The Lego games are the pinnacle of media game adaptations.
Not only the biggest commercial successes, but the one that has just been the most consistently good across the board. Name one big Lego game flop.
Second Lego Indiana Jones.
The Lego Indiana Jones games and even some of the Batman ones are probably on the lower end.
And Batman was fun, though.
Batman was fun, but the Lego Indiana Jones ones especially were like, because Indiana Jones were like puzzle games, and then you like put them into Lego, and you're like, I mean, puzzles are fun, but
I don't play Legos for puzzles.
I play it for the platforming, and like I don't play for the puzzles, so I could understand that one. Lego Dimensions also wasn't very.
That's true. Actually,
massive.
Lego Dimensions wasn't that big of a
I remember
hit.
it being hyped up, and then it came out, and everyone was
nothing
like,
ever came.
It was kind of like Disney Infinity, where like they tried to hype it up and build it up, and it was gonna be this multi-stage, and then it was just kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably the Lego Indiana Jones games and
Okay,
Lego
so there have been some ones they really tried to
But
make
let's
big,
be honest,
weren't,
everybody only really remembers the Lego Star Wars games. And all of those popped off like no one's business.
That's
Well, I
very
saved
true.
$40 back when I was, what would have been, like 8 years old to save up for that game.
Oh,
Lego Star Wars games, the first two, and complete Skywalker Saga, I feel like did too much.
Yeah, I never
Really?
played it.
Because what we discovered with the Lego Star Wars, because what the Lego Star Wars games had in charm was like none of the lines are voiced. They're all just hums and haws and screams. And it was like a
The
Mr. Bean
half-hearted,
comedy at that point. Like the Lego Star Wars games were built off of Mr. Bean style comedy.
it's
And then
true.
the Skywalker Saga came in, and like you had the option for the hums
Mumble
and
mode.
the mumble mode, but then they had it all voiced. And then they tried to make they tried to do too much with the Skywalker Saga. I feel like the later
I like the style of humor they added for the Skywalker saga. Like, especially the part where Palpatine is trying to electrocute Luke and he pulls out the Lego bricks for the electricity. And he's like,
Well, no, but that has nothing to do with the voice.
Oh.
I feel like the sequel games weren't as good.
well, it's just
the
has
source
because it's
material
the sequel.
wasn't as good.
Ah,
yeah.
the source material.
They're running off the crappy Disney fan fictions. What else did you expect?
Oof.
Yeah, but let's see. There was actually, I did once have a bad experience with a Lego Star Wars game, but it's because the short story here, not skill issue. What happened was, I was getting for my birthday that year, the Game Boy Advance was getting passed down to me, and my parents were going to get me any game that I picked for it.
I think I see where this is going.
Darren, my older brother, is like, get a Pokemon game. That way we can play it and we can trade our Pokemon. But I was on this huge Lego Star Wars kick for something. So I'm like, I want Lego Star Wars
It's
2.
a hardware issue.
And the version of that for the Game Boy Advance was garbage. You want to talk about, like, you know, the loss of the mumbly humor? Dude, you don't even know. It is so much worse
No, I've
on the
played-
Game Boy.
I've
Because it's like these
emulated-
little speech bubble things.
Yeah,
It's so bad.
That is one thing I will say, related and unrelated to video, like as a side tangent. That era of time where everybody felt like they needed to make portable ports of their console games. Let's never go back to that, please. Like, I love the PSP, I love the Game Boy, I love the DS.
It's true,
but some of
but-
those games did not need to be on those those handheld devices.
Let's be
They just
real.
weren't
The
good.
games we liked on those devices were the ones made for those devices.
They were like, look, like I love Star Wars Battlefront 2, but that did not need to be on the PSP. It did not work. It did not look good. It looked terrible. So we'll just kind of like,
Yeah.
so yeah, the Lego games are the most successful iteration of movies and
Movies
other
to
media
games,
to
ever.
video games ever.
So good.
They were very, very, very good. There was also that era of time in the early 2000s where every movie that got released got a game adaptation.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Like all three of the Star Wars prequels got ones. The Lord of the Rings movies got them
Yeah,
as well.
I've played those. The Lord of the Rings ones were hot garbage. It was like they got some people who didn't know how to make
Well,
a
that was
game.
typically how it was
Yeah.
that they got like these third-party developers to make these like movie games. But the thing was that the game had to come out at the same time as the movie, so the game developers were operating on an incomplete script. And kind of like learned more as they went. So the games when they came out were often just awful.
And a lot of the times it was really just a marketing stunt.
Oh,
I
they
mean,
were
like
no,
this,
they was
that's
100%.
exactly
That's
what it
no,
was.
it wasn't
This-
a lot of the time. It was every time it was a marketing stunt.
Very true. Very true. Like I wish had I known this would come up, I would have brought footage of me and my brother-in-law Trevor playing that Lord of the Rings one that was just a promotion for the release
No, so
of
it was an
Return of the
incomplete
King.
game.
Because what you have is you basically just run through these levels where you have only three things you can do. You can move around, you can attack, and you can block. And the attacking animation is this, and the blocking animation is this. You're just wildly waving your arms around, dual-wielding swords, with the most janky first-era Xbox graphics you have ever seen, and you're just, like, going through a handful of, like, stages that are related to scenes from the movie. And when I say related, I mean related to
Yeah,
scenes
but I
from
like
the
that
movie.
they didn't have the
quotes
full
here.
movie.
And then they would have, like, to start each of them, you'd have this epic opening clip that just had a bunch of clips from Return of the King with narration by Ian McKellen as Gandalf to introduce this, like, epic level that you're going to, you know, and then Aragorn and his friends go
Oh,
through
man.
the what's the cave with the ghosts in it? Why am I forgetting the name of
Don't
it?
ask me.
And then you cut to immediate just absolute garbage, like wild arm waving movement.
We
and
do not
janky
miss the
controls.
era of
Yeah.
promotional movie games. We do not miss it. Thank goodness that era is dead.
There really was a phase in those games. They would just rip scenes from the
Oh,
movie. to
straight
fill
from
the
the
gap.
movie.
And
I remember the time where I came across this whole slew of Transformers games,
Yep,
like the
yep,
Michael Bay Transformers
Yep,
series.
man.
Yep.
I was like,
how are those?
they're like kind of just like
Janky.
janky,
Yep. Nope.
like Call of Duty ripoffs of
Yep.
Transformers, where
Yep.
you can train into a car, but most of it is spent as
Yep.
the humanoid version where you're running around with your little arm cannon.
Yeah.
You know what we need? We need the same development team making the Spider-Man games to do a series of Transformer games. I bet they could pull it off.
Oh, they could.
Yeah.
They
I mean,
could.
they could. I don't know if it
I don't know if they
is Transformers
they
a thing anymore.
What was
I
the
mean,
name of this Lord of the Rings game?
should. A new movie just came out in May.
Okay,
It's
but
just
do
like
people,
Return of the
do people- is there still respect for that franchise?
Well, Transformers as a brand still has value, has name value.
It's proven itself to be pretty
Because let's
evergreen.
be honest, when was the last time a Transformers game actually came out? I think it was on the 360.
Oh god.
We haven't
something
had
like
like
that.
a modern day like Transformers game. If a AAA like big name company
like put a lot of effort into it.
made a genuine Transformers game, people would buy it 100%.
People would buy
Gears
it.
like
and
Transformers,
hopefully-
I could get behind that.
Yeah.
If it was well made.
Yeah, if it was well made, if they like made both the vehicle and walking modes feel impactful and useful, and it was a good idea, and you could seamlessly switch between them, like, and they had a good story and like
That's what we
interesting
need.
level design, it could be a success.
Just the era of promotional video games just doesn't need to exist.
That's true. And I was looking up lists of like some of the worst movie to game adaptations.
Oh
of
well,
all
we
time.
all know what number one is.
Most all of them have been
Yeah,
really
they're-
crappy movie promotional or movie
the
adaptational.
only one that has some charm to it is the Revenge of the Sith movie game because it had the alternative ending where you could kill Obi-Wan or Obi-Wan would die to Anakin's hand at Mustafar, so Darth Vader never got his suit. He was still just Anakin.
That's kind of cool.
That's
actually.
the only time. It's the only recollection I have of like something where the video game did something kind of cool, but it was still janky. Like the graphics and they're just bad. They were just bad because oftentimes it was like the video game development cycle would have as long as the movie development cycle, but the game had to come out first, so it would be shorter. So they would have the time that the movie was announced, and they would have only like basic assets and a basic idea for a story to work on, and that they'd get it more as, and then it would have to come out like 4 or 5 months before the movie came out.
So then you'd go in and you'd find that the game was full of all these levels of like, oh, there's this thing that took like a minute in the movie, and now they're stretching it out to an hour of gameplay because you need like these 7 platforming sections
Yep,
in order to.
Yep.
I wonder what it must be like, especially with like animated films where you get all the voice actors together and they have to add all this dialogue for the game, and they're just like, what the heck did these guys come up with? One that did that really well though was the video game adaptation of the Lego movie. Because not only did they add a bunch of levels with some of this things that would have
Yeah,
seemed
okay.
like
Well, but see, the thing with the
needlessly-
Lego movie though is that they had all the precedent of Lego games before it. They just went, well,
It's
we
true.
know it worked with the Lego games. We'll just do that for the Lego movie.
But no, they used the Lego movie style humor instead of the old Lego game style
yeah,
humor.
yeah.
And they got the whole voice cast. So there's these amazing moments like Vitruvius, the wizard voiced by Morgan Freeman. He has a special character ability called Blind Courage. And there are areas that other characters will just refuse to go. You walk up and then they'll just back up and shake their head and hands. Vitruvius will go there, and there's always a bit of funny dialogue. Like there's him crossing like this rickety bridge across the on a moving train. And they're like, "Hey, Vitruvius, could you walk over there?" And he's like, "Oh, sure. It's not like it's up high." And then Emmett's like, "Okay, he's just messing with us. He really can't see, can't he?"
Yeah, but see
And they
that,
got-
yeah, that's so good.
It's like that. That's how you do it. If you have like that same sort of creative style to
Well,
the
I'm like,
adaptation.
you don't really. There really aren't very many movie video games anymore.
Not so much. It was a big thing all the way through. I think till at least 2014.
I think through the
And it was
through
huge
the
in the-
360 era.
Yeah.
I think it ended with the PS3 and 360, and
It was. I would also be remiss to say that it was huge in the 80s. Almost every major movie had a Nintendo Entertainment System game, and most of them were garbage. Like I was
any
doing
ET
research.
enjoyers?
Any ET, yeah,
Any
ET.
any
Atari
fans?
ET.
Any Atari ET enjoyers out there? The
All
worst
right.
video game movie.
Let's
Movie video game to ever come into existence.
talk about ET, the game that almost killed home gaming. almost
You
killed
want to
it.
talk about a game that was so poorly made because it was literally just made to be a marketing stunt. That game.
Well, yeah, I found out more about it in doing my research for this episode. It was, I believe, the development team was a single person.
Yeah.
And it was Christmas rushed.
Yep.
So that means
Yep.
the guy was under some of the crunchiest deadlines any single person team has ever experienced, or probably any team has experienced. And like one of the biggest problems with that game was nothing was explained. You fell through a hole in the floor, you didn't know that was a hole. Because you walked over that one in the other room and it was a rug. And it used an early iteration of procedural generation to vary the map between playthroughs, which would have been cool if you knew what you were doing. So in this case, this thing that could have been like a game-changing innovation was just a frustrating aspect of a poorly made game.
It was because like every 80s, because didn't Home Alone have video games to it?
I'm sure.
Like every one of those 80s movies had games.
Top Gun?
Top Gun
had a
had
game.
one. They were all so bad.
It's funny. But hey, we've talked a lot about ones we don't like. Let's talk about adaptations of other media into games that we do really like. We've gotten the Lego stuff out of our system. Let's branch out into some other areas. Ben, you look like you're raring to go.
Star Wars video games, pretty good.
Typically, yes.
Star Wars is one of
And
those.
as much as people love to rag on Star Wars Battlefront 2, like overall,
itself.
it was a good game. It started out pretty poorly just because of the overall like loot box
And now
and
it's
pay to win
Monetization
progression
was the
system.
main
By the
issue.
time
But,
it
like,
ended
it was-
its live
if-
service life cycle, it was the game it was supposed to be.
Yeah, like at the end of getting rid of like the game didn't really change much gameplay wise.
didn't.
Yeah.
It was still a very good game to begin with. It was just the monetization of things.
Exactly.
And so,
It
feel like
became such a good
Star Wars.
but like all the Star Wars Battlefront games,
I feel like
very
Star
good.
Wars does inherently lend itself as an IP just naturally better to game design because a lot of games focus around interesting combat and interesting level design, and those are two things that Star Wars has in spades.
Well, Star Wars also benefits from having such an open source material.
It's true.
Because it's like
You can't just make anything.
all you have canon is the 9 movies and then the shows that take place that fill the gaps between the first 2 trilogies and the last 2 trilogies. Like you only have that span of time. The games can go anywhere during that period before or after.
And it's an entire galaxy, so throw in some Twi'leks, maybe a gun if you're feeling adventurous, and you're good.
Like they, because it's like, yes, while they're technically like Knights of the Republic is a media video game only in that it's Star Wars. Like there was no precedent, there was no story written for the Knights of the Republic games that they adapted. They just wrote their own story. Like Clone Commandos, the only thing they had were these clones in episode 2, and they're like, well, let's just write a story about them. Clone Wars didn't exist at the time.
It's true. And Clone Wars itself led to some great video games. I couldn't find the name of it, but there was a DS game that I played that basically had you running through various scenes from the TV show Star Wars: The Clone Wars, usually as Jedi, but occasionally as clones. And it was actually a lot of fun. The lightsaber combat was very interesting. The gunplay was kind of clunky, but it wasn't bad. Yeah.
Well, and then the Wii had a lightsaber game for it for the Clone Wars, and that game shouldn't have existed.
But Michael, did you bring one that you particularly enjoyed?
I brought a couple actually.
Yeah,
one's
let's hear 'em.
one's a game. Well, two's a game, and then one's an idea.
Oh.
Okay, so average age of everyone in this room is like mid-20s, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys remember back when we were kids, before the age of downloadable games,
Uh-huh.
you bought hard copies and you played the crap out of that
Oh,
thing
yeah.
because you couldn't afford anything else for
Oh,
like 6
yeah.
months.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
the number of hours I sunk into Spore and Age of Empires 2 is astounding.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't remember when Disney released the movie, but when Chicken Little,
The Chicken Little, oh my gosh!
Little?
hear me out, hear me the frick out. All right. Okay. So
Okay.
my sister, for whatever birthday, for my birthday, whatever year that was released, she gave me the Chicken Little game,
Oh
and
my
I admit
gosh.
I had terrible taste back then. But the Chicken Little, the motherfucking Chicken Little game for GameCube, I played the crap out of that.
I will say that during that time of like movie to like the movie to video game title time, the GameCube was like the holy grail of Disney adaptations because you had the Chicken Little game, you had the Monsters Inc. game, which was a dodgeball game. You also had the Finding Nemo game. Like, Disney made a bunch of game adaptations of their movies for the GameCube specifically, it seemed.
I just remember an off-brand it wasn't actually off-brand, but it seemed like it, Monsters, Inc. pinball game that we had
That
on
existed?
disc that I played on the PC a
But no,
little
we
bit.
had, my
Yeah,
grandma had the Dodgeball Monsters, Inc. video game.
Wow.
Yeah, but all of those were like kind of like side games. Like Chicken Little's, they straight
Well,
up.
Nemo was straight up the movie.
Yeah, Nemo's the movie, but Chicken Little, they fleshed out like between the scenes with these ridiculous, absolutely no context shenanigans. Like at one point, you were the turkey mayor on the back of an on-track truck shooting the town cannon at UFOs. It's like, and
At
that's
that point, they're just like, give up on the story.
Well, no, that
There's
was,
aliens.
that was
what can
how
we
some
do?
of those
At one
movie
point.
adaptations did it. Was they were like, the movie is the source material. We are now going to have fun.
we are now going into fan fiction, and it was awesome.
It
That
was
is hilarious.
like,
that does sound like a
They
fan
had there was like a
fiction.
Jimmy Neutron game for the GameCube that I played that had like
That's right. I saw
there was
some
like some
promotional material
aliens
for
or
those.
something. I don't
yeah,
quite
yeah.
remember.
And I know there have been multiple like South Park games that have been like pretty highly praised on the
there's
Nintendo
been
64
some
and other
Simpson
places.
games that were out during like
Yep,
the
so-
Wii and 360 eras. Like Simpsons Hit and Run was. I
It
think,
was
one
a
of
little
them.
before, but it was
There's
a big
been a
one.
few
Yeah.
Simpsons games, yeah.
And then we're not even going to talk about all the Flash games that came out.
Oh, yeah.
an infinite number
that
of
was-
Flash games.
Infinite number of Flash games that came out. I mean, like TV company, like show company, like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon literally had Flash
Oh my
games
goodness.
embedded in their website.
Oh yeah, they would make so many Flash games just to promote the latest season or next few episodes of Ben 10 or Foster's Home for Imaginary
And for
Friends.
Flash games, they were pretty good.
Yeah, you
Honestly,
had to go.
yeah.
You had to go to the library to play those because the
Yep,
internet
yep,
at your home was
yep.
crap.
The thing that I love during that time of like every media getting a game is all of like the crossover games. Like Nickelodeon had one where you could play. You had like Invader Zim, Aang, Jimmy Neutron, SpongeBob, all like
That is
competing in
pretty
these
great.
party games. Like
Move over, Mario Party.
it was.
Oh yeah.
I'm taking Aang
It
up against
seems,
Invader
like
Zim.
every major TV IP had like a party game with their characters in it.
All I
yeah,
know
I mean,
is that
it's
there was
true.
this one game. You know, Curious George.
Oh dear.
So there is this one character. It's this Italian man's cat called Gnocchi, and your goal was to get this meatball to Gnocchi's pasta.
Was it a Flash
This is a
game?
very
Flash
Okay,
Italian
it was a
game.
Flash game. I was like, wait a minute.
And basically, it was just this puzzle level thing where you had to turn these little like platforms to be certain angles.
Oh, it's one of those.
and you had the meatball that started at the top, and you had to get it down to the bottom.
Roll down.
I don't know what it was about that game. I played every single level 30 times over.
I mean, that's a tried and true type of puzzle in video games.
Well, I
is
mean,
to, like, rotate the
at
platform
this point,
to get the ball.
in mobile games,
I mean, yeah, mobile games have used the crap out
The
of
mobile
that, but-
games is those little pin things where you have to pull the pin to get the gold to the certain area. But they're,
with a misleading ad on YouTube.
yeah, because none of those games actually have that gameplay. It's just
Oh yeah, I was so disappointed. There was one that had like this shape, and there's these different wooden blocks, different shapes. You fit them in to like piece it together. And I was like, that's neat. I get the game. It's literally just a combination of Sudoku with Tetris pieces.
Hey, you know.
I was so mad.
Yeah,
But
Yeah,
anyway,
well-
moving on.
Yeah, well, this transitions are weird and everything like that, but the other big game that I really liked when I was a kid were Bionicle games.
the Bionicle games were good.
Now, Bionicle games were hit or miss, all right. But I'm not going to like go in depth on the ones I liked. But gosh, dang, I want an RPG style Bionicle
I
game.
mean, the
Okay,
problem
you
with
know, like an
Bionicles
open world
is that
Bionicle
IP is
game.
kind of dead.
well,
I don't care. I'll play it.
Bionicle lore, guys.
So you know, Michael, this is bringing back some memories for me. On my mission, my third companion out in the field.
Is he a Bionicle fiend?
He and I both loved Bionicles. So while we were out,
Don't tell
you
me
know,
you taught lessons with Bionicle.
no, we did not teach us. We didn't even
Toro
have them
died
with us.
for our sins.
No!
Oh gosh.
He did. My boy Matoro.
Well, I
It's
mean,
like the
Matoro's
Beyblade
sacrifice
thing
was.
where like Moses parted the Red Sea with a Beyblade.
Yeah, but going back to the thing, right? We were in the city of Ocean Shores, Washington in the winter. That place is dead in the winter.
Oh, so
There's
you-
almost nobody there. So while we're walking from empty house to empty house, just
come
trying
up
to
with
find
Bionicle
someone who's
lore?
home, we discussed Bionicle lore and then came up with a series of Bionicle game stories where we had one of them that was based off of, you remember Toa Lecon, right?
Yeah.
We came up with an idea for a story of one of them with like names and powers for each of the guys in his team, and then made it a story like Halo Reach. match where he was the last survivor. And like, I would have. I don't think we took notes on this, which we totally should have, because honestly, I was pretty proud of the story we came up with. And like, we just sort of retooled all the existing lore to create a new, more cohesive storyline that was a little easier to follow than the original Bionicle lore. Because let's be real, that got real convoluted real fast.
Oh yeah.
Which was part of the reason why the
Okay.
Bionicle line kind of died. But yeah, so
if we're talking toys to video games, though, the Yu-Gi-Oh and Bakugan and Beyblade games kind of went crazy sometimes. Those Bakugan and Yu-Gi-Oh games specifically.
Really?
Yu-Gi-Oh is still kicking.
That's
Yu-Gi-Oh
true.
is still kicking.
Somehow, Yu-Gi-Oh, an entire franchise that's just based around creating as many peripherals to promote purchasing cardboard cards as possible, is still going strong.
The Yu-Gi-Oh video games. I mean, I don't know how many ways you can iterate. Iterate on cards in video games, but they're doing it because it's like, yeah, it is the only game that does that. Because it's like, yeah, Pokemon has cards, but that's if you play the trading card, real version. If you play the video game version, the cards, there's no cards.
Well, yeah,
Yu-Gi-Oh
cards
is
are
literally
adapted
just a card game in a video game.
from- Well, Magic the Gathering Arena is the same thing.
True.
And that's a huge commercial success, but that's largely just because it's Magic the Gathering, and you don't need to go places to play it with people.
Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh has had so many different video games. It's like, how are you doing this? How do you keep making more Yu-Gi-Oh games? They're all just cards. You could just make one game and
It's
just
true.
DLC new things into it.
But yeah, hey, if anyone knows how to milk a singular concept, it's the people behind Yu-Gi-Oh. Let's be real.
Or, well, Pokemon.
I mean, Pokemon's
Pokemon
milk,
does it
but
more.
they've added more variety.
Card-based.
Yeah, Pokemon is diversified. They've added a lot more variety to the way they work the Pokemon formula. Yu-Gi-Oh is just all
It's the
cards.
exact same.
Any case, everything is the cards.
It is.
Because I mean, like, you guys know the story about how that all happened, right? He had the guy made this TV show about a kid who would just like. With the whole Pharaoh thing, who would just play games and then turn them into this way to punish evildoers. They had one episode where they played a game called Duel Monsters. Everyone's like, what's that? He makes a card game. It becomes a huge hit. He revamps the TV show just to promote the card game, and everything else that's what it does.
I summon Pot of Greed to draw new decks from my card. And then I use Pot of Greed.
Two more cards from my deck.
Well, that's not how Pot of Greed, but Pot of Greed.
Yep.
I'll be honest. I missed out on that part of my childhood.
Well, I wasn't a
had no
big.
interest
I
in
didn't
Yu-Gi-Oh.
grow up on Yu-Gi-Oh at all, but it's
My
like the
parents didn't
meme.
allow it.
The meme of it's time to do
Yeah, duel.
will never die.
Everyone knew that.
It will never ever die.
If you grew up in the early 2000s, or at least were young enough, you know the duel.
I think my only connection with Yu-Gi-Oh is the abridged series.
Yu-Gi-Oh Bridge is a classic.
Which is hilarious, yeah. If we're gonna continue off of things that aren't strictly movie adaptations, there's actually an adaptation I've really enjoyed that I was just playing last night. This was a franchise that I've been aware of for a while, but I've only just begun to dip my toes into. Warhammer 40K.
Oh yeah, those are.
Yeah, because okay, so for those of you who don't know, Warhammer 40K,
It's
is
a
the game
long
that
story.
Henry Cavill really likes.
it's a stupidly long story, but basically it is a tabletop game that's in this dystopian, themed or gothic architecture inspired, grimdark sci-fi.
Yeah,
setting.
like hyper
put it to
religious.
you like this. Yeah. Humanity is literally a fascist theocracy, and I kid you not, worshipping a space wizard's half-alive body.
Yep, and they call him the God King of Mankind, and the Emperor, of course, because it's always an emperor. And it's like this really grimdark sci-fi setting where most people are terrible, and there's just constant war and all this stuff. And that's where you get things about slaying the heretics. It's usually either a joke about paladins in D&D or something with Warhammer 40K.
Oh,
And
I always
heretics
just
is
think it's the
literally-
Holy Wars.
Well, I mean,
That's always where I go.
well, I mean, that's where the idea first originated, was talking about the Crusades. But then people took that and
No, I
applied
always
it
just
to.
think it's the Crusades.
Okay, but
You're just perpetually stuck back in the
Yeah.
11th century.
See,
It's
I
all-
don't think of the Roman Empire. I think of the Crusades.
You think of the Crusades. How often do you think of King Baldwin?
But I've known that Warhammer's had some video games. I didn't know what they were like. All of a sudden, my older brother gets really into Warhammer 40K Darktide, right? And I'm talking with him. He's like, "You gotta play it." I'm like, "Dude, my fun money budget has been already blown this month." And then he's like, "Hang on a second," and he buys it for me on Steam, gifts it to me. We install it that night. And I gotta say, that game's a lot
The
of fun.
tabletop
It
game,
is immersive.
video game adaptation.
Yeah,
Honestly.
Darktide for 40K is super immersive. It's not the best 40K game. Space Marine 2 is coming out soon.
Yeah, that is. I want to talk about that.
But
when that
I
comes out.
love Darktide and the way that
Darktide.
it just
you and I
dunks
should play
you.
Darktide together sometime soon.
Well,
That'd
the
be a lot
problem
of
is
fun.
I don't have it. I just watch the Let's Plays and
dang it.
I jam out to the soundtrack.
The
so
soundtrack is
Yeah.
amazing.
It's awesome.
And I gotta say, like their commitment to the theming and the aesthetic and just the immersion and
kinda have
vibe
to.
is immense. Because like Warhammer 40K has some of the most thoroughly written lore out of any fictional
lore is
thing
crazy.
ever. It's got like who
prequel-
knows how many people contributing millions of words,
Yeah,
and
well-
thousands of pages to it.
Well, put it to you like this: the prequel setup series for the whole event is 51 books long.
Yeah.
It's freaking longer than the
Warhammer
Bible.
lore is long. It's just long. It may
Mm-hmm.
be the longest consecutive bit of just like written material on a single like narrative in the English language. I would not be
The
surprised.
Warhammer setup lore is deeper than the Christianity setup lore.
Now it is.
Well, there's just so many people pumping so much stuff into it.
Lore. It
you know?
never ends. We're
Unless-
writing the prequel lore after it's happened.
And like, let's be real, with things like biblical and other scriptural accounts, there's a lot of times where they skip over like a good 10 years because like
The
those
written
10 years
lore.
were the written, but like Warhammer.
There are 66 books in the Bible.
Some
But the Warhammer setup is 51. That tells you just how much
full
stuff
books,
people have
like
written.
books.
Like novels.
Like books like the Bible is a book.
Maybe not Bible length, each of those 51 books, because the Bible's really long.
Might be.
Some of them might.
Michael's like,
But like the point
Book
we're
of
saying is
Matthew
people have
DLC.
written.
Book of Matthew DLC.
Oh no! That sounds. I'm not gonna make that joke. But basically, the point we're trying to make is Warhammer has so much lore, so much content in it that like
It'll be
anything,
farmed
it's
for
like
years to
Star
come.
War's, but more stuff is established.
It's Star Wars, but the lore's been not the Dino Nugget.
Oh no, it fell. But yeah, anyway, Warhammer 40K Darktide, very fun. I'm looking
On the
heavily
technicality
forward.
of a media video game adaptation.
Yeah, it's a media video game adaptation. Tons of fun. They commit to the theming so well. The gameplay is a ton of fun. It's kind of like Left 4 Dead, in the style of missions and stuff, but updated to modern, standards.
Instead of killing zombies, you're purging heretics.
You're purging heretics and mutants in the underbelly of Terra.
Well,
You're not in Terra.
to continue on the light
thought it said you were on
theming
Terra.
No, you're on. Ah, crap. I
of
forget the name of
toys
the
and
Hive
physical
City, but-
content, how about we do something? How about something that went 2 layers deep? So it had a movie
Oh,
made on the physical content, and then a game made off the movie, made off the
Wait.
physical content. I'm talking about Hot Wheels World Race. For the game.
hey, Hot Wheels.
That movie was a movie that I
was one of
honestly-
the movies
I
of
want
all
to go
time.
back and watch it one of these days, just
Yeah,
for
just let us know how it is.
just to have. Well, I've seen it obviously multiple times, but I want to like in 2023 go back
Yeah.
and watch the Hot Wheels World Race.
I
movie.
want to know how you feel about it with your current perspective.
And then they
I kind of
made-
want to go back and watch that, like the time when they made the edgy teenagers Hot Wheels TV show. You remember that one?
the Acceleracers and stuff.
Yeah.
Like Hot Wheels as a franchise is funny because there was like that era during like the PS2 GameCube era. It was like there were tons of Hot Wheels games that came out.
Yeah.
Hot Wheels like Stunt Racers, Hot Wheels Acceleracers, that were all like made off of the toys, and then they made like movies and TV shows, and then they made games, all within like this. The movies and TV shows were a connected universe. Like there was and
There
then
was an overall
outside
plot.
of Hot Wheels World Race, the games have absolutely nothing to do with the lore in the in like the actual media.
I do also feel like that era was a huge like time for racing games. Yeah, it's all about
Whereas
realism.
back in the early 2000s, it was like we're going freaking burnout, just run into things, or Hot Wheels World
Wackiness,
Race. We're doing
high
just
octane.
Hot Wheels games where you just how many stunts can you pop into one ramp jump?
How wild and exciting can you make it? It's like skater culture. They kind of incorporate that into it too, of like the same types of music and the flame paints and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
like Hot Wheels World Race took like that almost punk racing like stunt aesthetic and just was like, how much can we get away
It's
with?
like-
Because all of the races take place on like these super themed, like you're on a volcano or you're in the middle of the ocean or you're in space.
Yeah, they were just trying to make it as much of an adrenaline junkie type game as possible.
And it did very well, even though they reused like the same 10 soundtrack songs multiple times.
And everyone had that one like desert level with the huge rock formations that was always the same, but it was always so dang
Hot Wheels
cool.
World Race had 2 of them.
Ooh.
It's just the pod racing part where they're going through the big desert area.
It
with the
really is like the canyon
Because the
part
Hot
of
Wheels
the
World
pod
Race
race.
game was very simple. It only had like, I want to say like 16 to 18 tracks.
Actually, come to think of it, you know what I want? What I want to see? I want to see like the same design philosophy that they used for Hot Wheels games applied to a pod racing game.
That doesn't. You're not doing flips off a ramp in a pod racer.
You know what? Maybe I want
You're
to.
not trying hard enough then.
You'd fall out.
No.
You're drifting.
It's called centrifugal force, buddy.
It's called a seat belt.
See, the problem with that, that wouldn't work just because of how pod racers work. They're external engines. Trying to do a flip would make the fuel just not work.
It's sci-fi.
was it?
It's a space opera. Come on, you think we're gonna do too
The
much
Hot Wheels
realism?
World Race games were funny though, because there was like, I think there were only there was like 12 to 16 tracks, and all of them there was every theme of them. There was either desert, forest, space, water, and all of them had two.
Space, Rainbow
had
Road.
two. They all had 2 tracks based on that theme, and if it was that theme, it was the same soundtrack of both tracks. They had like 2 in the sky. One of the tracks was literally called Cloud 9. And its track and the other track in the sky had the same soundtrack.
What was the name of the other track?
I don't remember. I think it was called Aerial City. They got real creative.
Oh right, there's always the like something city, right?
I think one of the space levels was literally called Space City.
Yeah, that was also a thing at that time era. If you had like just some somewhat generic-ish game and you had many different like theme settings,
Space-
then
something
something city, you know, desert city, underwater city, or ocean city, space city.
I think
Oh,
Ocean City was also one of the track names.
Yeah, right. Because like Atlantis was just used up at that
But it was
point.
a
You
fun.
couldn't say that.
It was a fun game. You know, it was like it wasn't for a racing game. It was actually pretty good for like children. It was pretty easy to understand, but it had some mechanics that were a little in depth. It was like if you do the same trick off the ramp twice, you can't build up your fire boost meter because it's a stale trick. You got to do you know one of the 4.
And I feel like, go.
I like how you say it's like teaching children how to do stuff. Yes, the next time we take little Timmy out for grocery shopping, we're going to look for a ramp.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, gotta let them know before they get into driver's ed, and they try to like drill that out of them with silly things
That was
road laws.
a fun game because it literally had like the opening scene for the game literally was using cutscenes from the movie.
Yeah. And you know,
I looked up the tracks for Hot Wheels World Race.
oh, here we go.
Let's see. How many are named blank city? Satellite City.
Yep, there it is.
1,
Vapor City.
Yep.
2,
That's just
Submerged City.
Yep.
3.
Ice City.
Yep.
4. And that's about it.
4 of
Okay,
them.
4.
4 out of 12.
Vapor City. That's a weird way of spelling Portland.
I mean, he's got a point.
So yeah, it was
But-
like Cloud 9
yeah.
and Vapor City were the 2
So
like.
the thing I wanted to say as well about I want to also comment on the children thing because I'm realizing, you know, a lot of probably another reason why racing games got so big was a lot of people were coming straight off of Mario Kart 64. And they wanted something that
Double
was a
Dash.
little more in depth. And then Double Dash comes out for the ones who stick with Nintendo, but for the ones who transferring over to like other game developers, you know, they're going to get into these more nuanced games with these other
the better racing
places.
games. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a fan of realism racing games.
Yeah, same here.
Reboot Burnout 3 a dozen times and I'll be happy.
Yeah, it's like if I want like in-depth shading on cars on a rainy road, I'll go drive. I'll go drive somewhere in the rain.
Real life gameplay.
Real
Yeah,
life
it has the
gameplay.
most in-depth shaders I've ever seen, except for Unreal Engine 6. But you know,
What are some more obscure media games that you enjoyed?
When I was
We're talking obscure.
I
here.
mean, I'm not okay. Maybe this isn't too obscure. I got like the Hogwarts Quidditch
Okay,
game
that's-
for PC, but
I had that. I think the
I've
World
played that
Cup
before.
Quidditch
Yeah,
game.
the World
I had
Cup
it for
one.
Xbox. That game actually was crazy fun. Its mechanics were janky as heck.
oh
though.
yeah.
yeah. I mean, this isn't obscure, but just a quick mention of Star Wars Rogue Squadron, like the old one. I played that once or twice at my grandparents' house, of all things. It was
You
on the
didn't
old
even
PC
go
in
like
the
Jedi
basement.
Academy or something. These aren't niche. What the heck, guys?
Okay,
Good. I just wanted a quick mention. Onto the niche.
Okay, now the niche. Do you have an actual niche?
Well, I don't know if this would count as a niche because it's technically not media, but who remembers Sarge's Heroes?
What the heck is that?
So what?
Okay, this is a niche. So,
Is it a war? Is it a war?
all right. So
It
back
passes the
during
niche
back
check.
during the late '90s, the N64 released a series of video games.
well,
that
no,
were,
but is it a media to video game?
well, technically, because we've been talking about toys,
Okay,
that
toys
have-
to work. Toys work.
Okay,
just-
it was an Army Men video game.
No way. Was it actually
Oh.
It was-
branded like?
Well, no, it wasn't branded, but it was straight up the Greens versus the Tan. Sounds so racist. It was the Green Army Men versus the Tan
So
Army
were they
Men.
actual army men?
They were
That's
actually Army Men,
crazy.
and they
Oh
would
my
scream as
goodness.
you melted them with a real flamethrower.
Whoa!
But here's the crazy thing. Here's the
Oh.
crazy thing. So, Sarge's Heroes was this really fun because it would take place in the Army Men world, and then you would jump through an Army Men bucket portal into the real world
that's
where you
kinda
would
cool.
still be the size of an Army Man.
Okay,
And you'd
that's
be
actually creative.
You'd be fighting the Tans. But here's the hilarious thing. There's, last time I checked, 3 games in the series. 4 if you want to count like the beta that turned into the game that started it. It's fun. It's all fun and games the first 2. And
Oh,
then
and
the
then it just
third
gets old.
game, the third game, they just went Gears of War with it.
Oh,
It got gritty and it got real, and it was such an out of the ballpark brand change from
That's
like this
hilarious.
happy Toy Story like fighting the Tan soldiers to suddenly
Now Gears of War.
yeah the first line it's your character Sergeant Hawk. I still remember when it all ended.
Did this
The Tan-
happen like during that turn in the the mid 2000s, the mid aughts to like edginess?
Yeah,
Was that what
kinda-
happened?
Kind of, sort of, but like, it was just so like the love.
Came out of
Like
nowhere.
spoiler alert for a game that no one here knows about. Your love interest dies in your arm the third game because her legs get blown off. It's like,
Wow,
well,
really,
that
really
was
making the Army Men games.
Yeah, I know.
Someone on
They-
the dev team just watched Saving Private
Yeah, they
Ryan
watched
a few too
Saving
many
Private Ryan.
times.
Let's do that. Let's do that. That one.
and like the hilarious thing is this last game, they just went full in on all the tropes.
Oh no!
Like by the time you beat the final boss, turns out it's your old CEO who you left for dead, who somehow turned tan. I don't know how that works in that universe, but
because they're plastic.
he's got a new spray job.
Okay,
Anyway,
yeah, no,
is this
there's
spray
your niche,
paint?
There's your niche games for the N64.
yeah.
Wow.
So that was
That's fun.
I love it. That's hilarious. I gotta go look up some old footage of that or
fun.
something.
yes. It's called Sarge's Hero. The first 2 games are fun. The last game is just hilariously edgy.
Oh man. Oh, I know that Avatar: The Last Airbender isn't niche, but I think their games kind of were.
They didn't really have a ton of games.
They didn't have a ton
They're
of them,
making
but
one.
They're making one. That's going to be huge. But they did have a handful. And again, with those games, well, actually, no, this came out way too late to be a promotional game for it. But there's one that's literally where you just go through several major fight scenes, or like other scenes from Book 3, like taking out the factory, where you can actually go and sabotage the factory, or the invasion on the Day of Black Sun. And it was actually kind of fun. It was more of just a like, run through, hack and slash the enemies, but not like fully hack and slash, just kind of,
Yeah.
waltz through, whack a bunch of things, and then every so often use this character's unique bending ability to do this thing. But at the same time, it was on the Wii, but at the same time, some of the different like puzzles that you would solve with bending actually felt kind of fun, because it would be a lot of fun, especially as Zuko or Katara, to take either like to grab a flame from a torch, because like you could just do your flame attacks, but if you wanted to do like any sort of specific
You had to
thing,
take
you would
existing.
point the Wiimote at like a torch or a brazier or something. You would take the flame, and then you could just move that fire anywhere you wanted. You could hit people with it too. So what was really fun was I would go to Zuko. I'd like stand at one spot where I knew enemies would just be constantly spawning. I'd take the brazier and just whack, 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 whack,
Hey.
whack, just fruit ninja them basically with the
fun.
fire.
Yeah, I didn't know that they had a Wii game.
Yeah, it was kind of fun, to be honest. I think it was THQ.
THQ was the ones that made a lot of the because they made a lot of the Disney adaptations with THQ.
Yeah,
on the
THQ did a
GameCube.
lot of adaptations.
They made
When was
World
the last
Race.
time they did something major? Come to think of it,
I
It's
think they're
been a
now
while.
more of a minor company and more work with major companies to make games.
Yeah, I think they now are more
Because
of a
I've
support
seen
role.
their logo on some racing games, but they aren't like the main developer of games anymore. Because they worked a lot with Activision. Because Activision worked on it was like Activision and THQ that made lots of those Disney games.
Yeah.
Because they worked together.
I like how I look up the Avatar: Last Airbender video game, and the first thing that comes up is a Roblox.
Dang it.
Roblox is just the
Of
way back
course
machine.
it's Roblox.
man.
Oh,
See,
wow.
my
look at
favorite
that.
niche games is there's a series of games that as soon as I say it, everybody who's played it will know. Remember for some reason how they made 3 or 4 Wipeout games for the Wii and Kinect?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know why they made a whole series of those. They were fun, but you didn't need multiple of them.
but then they could sell multiple of
They
them.
were all fun though, and it's like they made a new one, and you're like, why are they making this? I'll buy it and play it because it's fun, but why does it exist?
Maybe because it's a new season of the show. There's new courses or
The
something.
season of the show ended in like 2012.
Okay.
They made like 3 or 4 games for it. They were so much fun. But like the on the Wii and like, but the problem was is that the games were made specifically around the motion controls, and they didn't work. Especially on the Kinect version, I don't think they ever worked how I wanted them to. And
So
the
it's just
Wii
one of those
version had just
janky-
like crazy like hit detection on like the obstacles.
Oh, I bet.
But they had like John Anderson and John Henson, like they had their voices.
Yeah, that's right, and it would respond.
And
to
they
how-
would
like,
respond, and they had
programmed that part
they
really
had
well.
Jill's voice as well. Like they had the actual like they had the 3 hosts actually voice the
It's
characters.
like you would spill, and you would hear the host go, "Oh!" Like
Yeah, like obviously it was
Yeah.
like you would hear repeated lines, but they had the actual host voices, and they would do replays. Like it was actually pretty funny. They were pretty good. Now, but
Honestly.
that's not the niche because it's like Wipeout. You don't remember, it, but then as soon as someone says Wipeout games, like oh wait, yeah, I remember.
those
that.
exist.
The games that I remember are the Code Lyoko games.
Oh my!
They made them on the
gosh.
Wii and they made them on the DS. Those
Code
were
Lyoko.
good.
I only have the vaguest memories of Code Lyoko from when I was a kid.
The one I played was on the Wii, and when I got it, it was like 2009, like right after the Wii. I got like my dad got me like the box set for it, so it had like a shirt, it had a figure, it had the game, and then it had
my
an art
goodness.
book with it. It was actually kind of crazy.
Wow, that's
and
impressive.
it was lots of. I think it was called Infinity Spark, or some Infinity something. The word Infinity was in there, and so it was just like a side. It was a separate story that they had written with the same characters and everything, but it's just not a story that takes place in the show.
Okay.
So it was like a side story that Xana's doing this old thing, and so you go through all 4 of the sectors. You go into
Did it
sector
have
5.
like? Did it have voice acting or anything?
Yeah, all the original
like-
voice actors.
Oh,
were
so like
voicing.
you'd hear that one guy with the stutter, like with the really high pitched voice.
Odd.
Yeah, that's his name. Did you guys know actually? There's a group trying to put together fan dub to make some new Code Lyoko content. Not fan dub, like a new fan project to like reignite
Yeah,
the
they
series.
are.
I auditioned for that, but the character I didn't get in. But like the character didn't sound anything like me anyway, so I knew it was a bit of a.
Yeah, the Code Lyoko.
Wide shot, but-
they made a few games for it. Like the DS ones, obviously, as DS games were simple. But like the Wii version of the one that I played, like had like the ship combat in the digital sea. It had all the sectors. Didn't really have boss fights a ton because it was a lot of platforming. It was a lot of platforming and like taking use of the characters' various abilities, and all of like the real life content was all like visual novel style dialogue with still images of the characters. But then like the gameplay wasn't awesome, but it wasn't terrible. For 9-year-old me who loved Code Lyoko, playing a Code Lyoko game was
Hey, there
was a
you
lot
go,
of fun.
man. There
I
you
feel
go.
like that defines all these games.
They were
It
bad
wasn't. They weren't. They were bad, but we still enjoyed
because
them.
we were kids.
Yeah. They were just good enough to be fun.
I thought of one more, just really fast.
Okay.
Does anyone else remember the 3D Shrek fighting game?
How about just the Shrek games in general?
Or that one too?
Yeah, there have been a handful of Shrek games. I remember going over to a friend's house and they were playing, I think on, maybe PlayStation. No, I think it was on. I don't remember which version of Xbox, but basically it was a platformer Shrek game based off of Shrek 2.
It's
And
probably
there's
the
like,
Xbox.
Yo, I remember this.
and
yeah.
they're all like, "Oh, we're going to go to Kingdom of Far, Far Away," but Shrek's like, "Oh, we need to get some more eyeballs for the trip."
Yep.
And so you do this platforming level
Yep.
where you just grab eyeballs the way that Sonic picks up rings.
Yeah, no,
You
I had
know?
that. I had the Shrek 2 game on GameCube.
Okay, you
That's
know
the,
what
that's
I'm
the
talking
same one where they basically go through the mines of Moria to get to Far, Far Away, right?
And then you
yeah,
fly through and you're like, but you're like on the dragon, or at the end you're like on the dragon trying to chase the carriage like through this gorge.
about. Stay on target.
On target.
Yeah, but what were you gonna say about the fighting game?
Yeah, so there was at one point they released this 3D, mind you, 3D fighting game. So like camera angle was up and above the arena. You could go. It was more than just left and right, up and down. Anyway, they had all sorts of characters from the main cast to like other fantasy or just novel characters who were brought in. Quasimodo was in there.
Well,
And his introduction's hilarious. Like, it starts off, the cutscene is just the middle of the night in the swamp, and you just start hearing a massive drum solo get pounded out. Shrek wakes up, camera pans back, the Cathedral of Notre Dame's right there.
Hey.
But the fun thing about these games is that all the levels were destructible, or at least a good
that's
portion
fun.
of them were destructible.
Ooh.
And so you're playing as these characters, beating the crap out of each other, and just ruining the fairy tale aesthetic, and I loved it.
That does sound like a lot of fun, actually.
What's your niche game?
Me?
Or is your Avatar one your niche game?
I'm trying to. Well, you gotta understand. When I saw things where I knew that it was an adaptation of a TV show or a movie, most of the time I steered clear of it. So I didn't have an experience with a lot of these. And most of the time when I got one, it was because my parents were like, "That looks neat," and just threw it in on the Christmas present pile.
Fair enough.
Stocking
That's how. Yeah, exactly. That's how we got the Avatar game. I'm trying to think. I might need some more
What
time.
about
Let me
you,
look
Ben?
some stuff
You
up.
don't have
Ben?
a ton of time.
So yeah, we're getting close to 2 hours now. So I just got one thing. Back when I first got my PS4, my parents got it for me.
PS4. Wow.
Oh,
Back a
man.
long time ago. My mom wasn't a huge fan of anything that had to do with any sort of shooting. So like no Star Wars,
Yeah.
no not Halo, no like Rainbow
Call of
Six or whatever.
Duty, yeah.
And she was like, she was looking for a game. She was like, oh, it's next Christmas. What can I
Oh, no.
get my son for his PS4?
Oh no.
She got me this little bundle pack of board games to play on.
Oh.
So it was a bundle of Battleship, Monopoly. I can't remember the other two. But it was a 4-pack of these, and she was like, "Here you go." I'm like,
Oh.
"Thanks." And like, I just thought like it's funny that those kind of media ports exist for video games, where like, oh,
Board game ports. Video
just
game
play
versions.
Monopoly. Like, I can understand that, but like for a at-home console game, it's kind of just.
Yeah. I mean, it was.
The thing is, we had all those games in
Yeah. In hard copy.
in hard,
Oh well.
and so
And let's be real. At first, the controls on a lot of those board game adaptations of video games were pretty janky.
I mean, I played Monopoly on the Game Boy Advance and Battleship
That's
and
a
Connect
low.
4 and chess.
Yeah, and let's be real. Chess has been ported to anything that could ever run a game ever.
You can fight
Like-
chess now.
Oh yeah, we've spoken
we've
about
spoken
higher
at length
dimensional
of
chess. Like, have you seen or listened to our episode about like funny game reviews?
No, I have not.
You should. That's a good one. But anyway, okay, I found one.
All right,
I found
Kyle,
one.
end
This
us
one's
off with yours.
okay. Have any of you guys like the movie? May not be niche, but have any of you guys watched the movie The Expendables?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there was a video game adaptation of this, but interestingly enough, this wasn't to promote The Expendables. Well, it was half to promote The Expendables and half to promote another game that came out called Broforce. Now, if any of you guys have,
I remember that.
yeah, you remember Broforce?
Wait a
So what they
minute.
did was they made a game called The Expendabros. It's free on Steam, and it's essentially the same gameplay mechanics as Broforce, but you're playing as characters from The Expendables.
Just a modded Broforce.
Pretty much, but it's by the same Broforce developers. It's a pretty short game, and it's one of the funniest, dumbest, like, because you go through and when you finally like get the guy at the end, you get to interrogate him, and like there's this like screamo announcer interrogation, and it's just you just punching the ever living daylights out of this guy until his head literally explodes, revealing that he's a robot copy of the guy. And then it's like interrogation complete, and then they have this whole cutscene about wait, it's a fake, and I think it's like the villain from one of the Expendables movies, and then like. This dude comes in on a helicopter and he leans out the door, like rolls down a ladder. He's like, "Hey, hurry up! The beer's getting cold and this place is about to blow." And so they all, you get this like quick, like run while the building's exploding level, and then you just hop on the helicopter and fly off. And that's the
That's the end of the game.
that's the end of the game. And it's hilarious. I've played through Expendabros so many times, and then I've actually found out about Expendabros first, and then I find out about the full like Broforce game, which has like all of these different action movie heroes you can play as, including multiple characters played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think he has the most representation in that game. But you also have what's her name from Alien?
I don't know.
The lead.
Really.
Ridley
Scott.
Ridley Scott. Yeah, she's one of the characters. You have the Terminator. You have Arnold Schwarzenegger's guy from Predator. You have several characters from
Ridley
the Matrix.
Scott is a British filmmaker.
Not
Ridley-
Scott is not a
Ridley. Oh,
character.
okay. But it was Ridley, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's
Ridley is from Metroid.
The dragon. I'm talking about the girl from Alien.
Alien.
Unimportant.
But anyway, like, so I guess you could count Broforce as one because it adapts just a whole bunch of action movie heroes
Guess you could.
into this wild
Ellen
run and
Ripley.
gun. Ellen
Ripley.
Ripley. It started with there was an R. Ellen Ripley, but yeah, she's in there. And so yeah, that's my niche one is Expendabros / Broforce, and it's stupid, ridiculous, but a lot of fun.
Good way to end. Shout out to Uno.
Never even mentioned Uno.
We don't need to.
I have
This
the oldest Xbox known to man. I don't have Uno.
is- Shout out to Uno. All right. Well, I think that's about all. Shall we wrap up?
That's a good place to
Bye-bye.
end.
I think
All
we shall
right.
wrap up, Mr. Host.
We're all hosts here, but
I'm
Knights
just,
of the
I'm just a
Pad.
guest.
You're
a guest
You're a
host.
host. Yes,
Okay,
host.
fair enough.
A
Yeah.
ghost.
Booga booga fool.
Anyways, Knights of D-Pad is a publication of the Daily Universe. We'd like to give a special thanks to Alan Neves, Miles Romney, and Melissa Gibbs for everything they did and do to help support us and continue to do this podcast. Also, if you'd like to reach out to us with feedback, ideas for topics, or just to say hello, just like Scott has done millions of times now, you can shoot us an email at knightsofdpadpodcast@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces, all lowercase.
Be like Scott. Look
Like
at your
Scott.
Scott. Now back to me. Now back to your Scott. Now back to me. Sadly, I'm not your Scott. But if you email us, you could be like Scott.
Okay.
That Old Spice parody totally fell apart.
It
Continuing
kind
on.
of did, but yeah. It's,
I tried. Keep going.
Anyways, with that, let us sign off. My name is Aiden,
I'm Mike.
I'm Kyle.
and we are the Knights of the D-Pad. We'll see you next time.